Welcome back to Real Talk with Susan Stone and Kristina Supler. We are full-time moms and attorneys bringing our student defense legal practice to life with real, candid conversation. Kristina, believe it or not, even though we're looking outside and there's a lot of snow out there,
yuck.
Did you know what time it is?
Well, if I'm thinking about what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to guess that we're in the time of year that despite the snow outside, we have to start planning for our children's summers.
And especially summer camp.
That's
Believe
right.
it or not, if you want your child to go to one of the more popular summer camps, now is the time that you would register. And it's hard to think about it because like Santa Claus hasn't even come down that chute.
I know. And I'm particularly excited to speak with today's guest because I'm in my own family wrestling with the idea of sending my son off to camp. And so I'm really looking forward to today's talk.
We might learn a little something on Real Talk. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Sure. Today we are joined by Dr. Chris Thurber, who has dedicated his professional life to improving how adults nurture others and enhance the lives of youth. A graduate of Harvard and UCLA, Dr. Thurber has served as a psychologist and instructor at Phillips Exeter Academy since 1999.
I've heard of it.
Heard of it? Sure.
Of it.
He's written some books. His best-selling family resource is the Summer Camp Handbook, which has been translated into Mandarin, believe it or not. And more recently, he has authored The Unlikely Art of Parental Pressure, which was described by The Atlantic as the rare parenting book that respects both parents and children. Dr. Thurber's research and writing have focused on homesickness prevention, healthy parenting, and helping children learn from mistakes. So Dr. Thurber, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me as a guest. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So it's so funny. I was thinking about summer camp, and I still remember that when my oldest, whose birthday it is today, happy birthday, Alex, but when she was in third grade, I went on a field trip to Maine with her, and we looked at camps together.
I can only imagine.
Camp
touring. What a life.
It was great. We had the best bonding time. But the question is for you, I chose to be a rising fourth grader as a time to go to camp. We looked at camps when she was a rising third grader. In your professional opinion, what is the best time to send students away for a summer camp and experience? And I just have a second part to that question. I chose a camp where I just threw my kid in for 7 weeks because I was told from a well-known Cleveland area psychologist that they do better with a longer stint because when you do a shorter stint, just as they're getting over homesickness, you're yanking them away. Thoughts?
Well, in terms of what age a child should be at overnight summer camp, and I do think that, like any experience, overnight summer camp is not for everyone, but I would say that in my experience as a parent, as a researcher, as a psychologist, there's probably a camp for everyone. And I think it's a perfect complement to the traditional classroom setting. So a way of boosting kids' social and emotional learning, a way of increasing their social skills, their confidence, their sense of adventure. And there's wonderful research to support all of my life experience and anecdotal evidence. The age at which a young person might go to overnight camp for the first time depends a lot on their previous life experiences and a little bit on their personality. And I think the way I would answer that question is not by giving you a number like 7 years old or 8 years old or 9 years old, but I could say that most overnight camps would take children as young as 7 or 8. So that tells you something about 150 years of trial and error has landed us at that age. But for a particular child, it really is going to depend on that parent or primary caregiver looking carefully at the child's readiness, which depends a lot on what previous experience that child has had away from home. I don't know for Alex, but I would imagine that she had spent overnight at a friend's house, or she'd been at her grandparents' house without you there for a couple of days. And that's the perfect sort of preparation for multiple weeks at an overnight camp.
And do you have a thought about the second part of my question, 4 weeks versus 7 weeks?
Or maybe even shorter, depending on the camp.
Well, I haven't, in my experience, noticed a difference in the factor that your friend cited, which is intensity of homesickness. In fact, this was what I wrote my dissertation on, was homesickness, and have followed the research that's been done since then quite closely, enough to know that there isn't a difference in, say, homesickness intensity between someone who's staying at camp for 2 weeks versus 4 weeks versus 7 weeks. That, again, I would say your friend was right in that longer stays, and I would say 4 weeks or more, result in a more immersive experience for young people. And that shorter stays, just a few days, are a good taste of what overnight camp is like, but aren't going to create the kinds of social bonds and result in the sort of self-reliance and willingness to try new things that will happen with a longer stay.
That's exactly what I learned at that time, that it really takes a good chunk of time, like 4 weeks as a minimum, before you can really develop the friendships, develop leader styles, or even reinvent yourself. You could be that nerd at school and that fabulous person at camp. It's a chance of really defining yourself.
It is
Sounds like
cool
a good movie.
Right? Yeah.
There is
Well,
one.
a good movie and an even better experience. It's one we underestimate sometimes, I think, the social pressures that young people feel in elementary school even. And you mentioned The Unlikely Art of Parental Pressure that I wrote with Hank Weisinger. We took a look at a lot of the research that's been done and were surprised ourselves to see how pernicious the effects of unhealthy pressure are for even elementary school age children. And a lot of it is about pressure to conform to dress, conform to preferences for favorite TV shows and how you present yourself online. So there are a lot of different domains of conformity, all of which happily evaporate at the best camps. And I think that sort of reinventing yourself and boost in self-confidence can happen in as little as 2 weeks. I would also agree with you that a longer stay, like 4 or 7, is going to strengthen that young person's confidence.
Dr. Thurber, I'm curious to hear your thoughts for our listeners out there, parents with a child, let's just say in grade school, age is irrelevant, but a child who's maybe only slept at grandparents' house or has had maybe 1 or 2 sleepovers with a friend, family member, whomever. What advice would you give those parents for sort of the building blocks to help ease your child into this experience to go away from home?
To have more of those. I mean, and we were at a deficit because of having to quarantine, many of us, during the pandemic. So we have some catching up to do in providing healthy experiences for kids away from home. And just as you suggested in your question, a day here, a night here, a couple days, expanding to 2 or 3 days. Those sorts of experiences are what give a young person confidence in their ability to spend time away from home without their primary caregiver or caregivers. And they can alert you as a parent to any sorts of anxieties that need to be sorted out prior to a camp stay.
What should parents look for in an overnight camp?
That's a good question, because no camp is going to say, send your kid here, we're okay. I mean, every camp has a long list of superlatives: best, most fun, exciting, you name it. Everyone's smiling on the video on the website. So what should parents look for when vetting camps?
It's such a great, you guys are cracking me up, and it's such a great question. First of all, can I just say how happy I am that we're recording this in late November, and hopefully it'll be provided to your listeners soon, because as you said in the opener,
Now is the time.
This is the time. I get asked to do
I
podcasts
know.
all the time.
This was Susan's idea.
This
Right?
is my idea.
An experienced camp mom sender offer.
Right,
Yep.
right.
I said we got to do camp now.
Well, may all moms and dads be as prescient as Susan and Kristina. Seriously, it's this is the time to be thinking about it. This is the time, as Kristina said, to be preparing with practice time away from home. And what you should look for in a summer camp is a great question because, and you were joking about it, you go into a camp's website, remember that that's marketing. And I'm not deriding camps or their websites, and it's important that they have them and there's great information on them. But remember, it's marketing, and the camps are going to look similar. I mean, you can distinguish the all boys camps from the all girls camps, from the all gender camps, from the co-ed camps, and the ones that have horseback riding from the ones that don't have horseback riding. And that is information that you can cull from a website, but that's not telling you anything about the quality. So I would say three things that I think parents need to look for. And you have listeners all around the world, but let's bring it down to North America. In Canada, there are provincial camp associations like for Ontario and for British Columbia, et cetera. In the United States, we have the American Camp Association. These are the accrediting bodies for camps. And it doesn't guarantee that a particular camp is a great match for your kid, but these associations are a first step that parents should look for. Is the camp accredited? To be in operation, it needs to be certified by the Board of Health in most states. So you can assume that that's the case, but you can ask to see their, Board of Health cert. Then I would say, by whom are you accredited? Knowing that accreditation happens once every few years, and it is a way of saying, at the time this camp was visited by trained peers in the camp world, it met these minimum criteria, or maybe exceeded them. Then is where it gets interesting. And that's why John Malinowski and I wrote the Summer Camp Handbook, because there are lots of accredited camps, and some of them I wouldn't ever send my own child to, and some of them I would be glad to. So I think what you need to look for is, first and foremost, after it's passed Board of Health and accreditation, is this a place where there's a good deal of tenure among the staff? Now, potentially the director who was there for 30 years just retired, and so the new director's only been there for a couple of years. But you want to look over time. What's the average tenure of the director? What is the average tenure for the other senior staff, assistant directors, program directors, waterfront directors, and how long do the staff who work there generally work there? And that tenure tells you a lot about the loyalty and the spirit and the consistency that will exist at that camp, which I think are all important contributors to a young person having a really positive experience. Next is, where do they get their staff and how do they train them? And this is really my wheelhouse.
I remember that because
Yeah.
the camp I had sent my children to, there were a lot of counselors that they received from Australia and England. And I remember because they made my kids eat Vegemite and they thought that was hilarious. But they were great. They really had some really fun, and they were learning the fun, cute accents, and they love it. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I really liked that the camp we ended up selecting had a therapist on staff to deal with issues. And it really was quite helpful.
Yeah, I endorse that wholeheartedly. And I think that people in that position, a mental health professional who's part of a camp, often also participate in the staff training. So as I was saying, where are the staff from? Where are they? How are they hired? How are they trained? That's really crucial, right? I mean, the centerpiece of the camp experience is going to be your child's new relationship with this young adult surrogate caregiver. Will they make peer friends? Yes, of course. But who influences the experience more than anyone else are the young adult leaders. And so you want to know as much as you can about them.
That's a really great piece of advice for parents out there listening to this, though, to look at the tenure of staff and employees, how many come back year after year, because that speaks volumes for the nature of the experience. Happy staff then hopefully translates to happy campers. So I love that.
It definitely does.
I want to date myself in my next question. Okay. Do you remember the Alan Sherman song, Hello, Mudda. Hello,
Oh,
Fada. I
yes.
won't sing for everybody. It's like one of my favorite songs. In fact,
Never heard of it.
I know. It's a great song. It's
Yes.
a really funny song. Alan Sherman. Hello, Mudda. Hello, Fada. Fadduh. Great song for you listeners out there. I would play it, but it talks about homesickness. And I, you know, I remember when I sent my kids to camp, I I thought homesickness was normal. So when I got the first "I miss you, Mom" letter, I knew it was temporary. And then by the time you pick them up, they're like, "I want to stay," and they're crying that they're leaving. However, my kids were young and went to camp pre-COVID and pre the mental health issues that Kristina and I wrestle with every day. I mean, I believe that kids are wrestling with social media. My kids did not have cell phones when they went to camp. It was unthinkable that a young child or a middle schooler would have a cell phone.
That's so interesting that you say that, Susan. I hadn't thought about that. And imagining, well, my daughter, I mean, I guess I have a direct experience with this, but I hadn't really tied it to the context of our practice. When she's away at camp, and the camp experience she has every summer is 2 weeks of sleep away, and there's no electronics or anything like that. And she's fine. I mean, she adores her camp experience. But for many students who are so tied to their devices, social media, all those connections, to then have them ripped away,
It's just
it
different.
makes the transition all the more difficult. And pile on top of that homesickness, it actually is a lot. It's a tall emotional order for adolescents.
So how do you know, Dr. Thurber, between normal homesickness that a parent should go, that'll pass, versus
Something serious.
I need to check in on this? And what is the appropriate way to check in on this? It is not get on a plane, I assume, and pull your kid out immediately.
No.
But is it? I could be wrong.
No, you're not wrong. Again, you're right. You're also, again, prescient in saying that homesickness is normal, because it absolutely is. Of course, it varies in intensity from one person to another, but adults miss things about home when they're away as well, like on a business trip or something like that. So
we know it.
right. So look, this is really essential preparation, in addition to what I said earlier about some practice time away from home, but letting your child know that you expect that there'll be some things they miss about home. Maybe it'll be home cooking, maybe it'll be you, or if there's another parent in the household, maybe it'll be the comforts of the room, the dog, sibling, whatever it might be. And, it's different things for different people, but with practice time away from home and with an understanding that this is an absolutely normal phenomenon. And I tell kids, look, there's something about home you miss. That means there's something about home you love. That's wonderful. And all those things that you love are going to be there when camp wraps up. So love this while you're at camp, love this experience, make yourself at home here, and look forward to what you're going to return to. It's fantastic. However, there are instances when, the intensity of homesickness is getting in the way of that child's enjoying activities and participating in other ways at camp. It's getting in the way of their making new friends, and it's getting in the way of their eating and sleeping. And a well-trained staff are going to know how to spot that. Here's a kid who isn't eating well, sleeping well, not participating, not making friends. So those sort of primary functions of a camper, when they're, a day or two, we're going to make it. If it's that extreme on a chronic basis, that camper is not eating well, sleeping well, connecting, participating, the first thing that's going to happen, again, at a camp with a well-trained staff, is someone at camp is going to contact you and say, here's the situation, here's how we've been managing it, let's talk about options. But it would be a huge mistake for any parent to preemptively respond to what is, in 99.9% of cases, a normative homesick letter by getting themselves to the camp and robbing their child of such an important developmental experience.
Do phone calls help or hurt a child sort of weather the storm of homesickness?
Unequivocally, they hurt, until you've passed at least the 2-week mark. And then phone calls, if it's a 4 or 7 week experience, are appropriate if they are scheduled, not as a treatment for homesickness, not you miss your mom or you miss your dad, and so let's get them on the phone. It's never a treatment for homesickness. And if it's ever used by camp directors who don't know the research, haven't been to one of my workshops, or parents who, haven't read the Summer Camp Handbook. And again, these are loving, well-intentioned people, but it is absolutely the wrong thing to do. If it's a scheduled contact after the 2-week mark that's used simply as a way to keep in touch, great. Even better, though, letter writing, because think about the difference. You have to
I remember that.
ponder, you have to personalize, you have to reflect, and then to get a response, you have to wait. And that's really good for kids. They don't have enough
Delayed
practice.
gratification.
Though I will say that all the she camps now, there's still some letter writing, but then there's emails, and it's not, unfettered access, but you have to wait a day for your response. So there's a little bit of delayed gratification, but it's not like a week for the post to be delivered.
That's okay.
What
That's okay.
about
I'm a big
care
fan of
packages?
handwriting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure,
Sure, absolutely.
No, care packages, because I know that I remember this like it was yesterday. What started out as send a few pieces of candy, then became my kids were saying this one got this and this one got that, and you don't love me if you don't send me this. And
Status thing it almost turned into as well, the comparisons, who got what.
Oh, and I was always on the bottom. Does that surprise you?
I doubt that very much.
I'm telling you, and I sent some good care packages. Thoughts?
Well, if you're bored this summer, you could send me some care packages just to my
Me
home.
too.
But no, that is the problem. You just described it, and most camps are moving to a policy of no care packages. Sending your child to camp, investing your time and your money, although many camps also offer financial aid. You did a wonderful thing by involving, Susan, your child in the search for what camp is it going to be. It gave Alex decision control. She felt involved in the process. That is a wonderful way to diminish the intensity of homesickness. So without having a conversation, the two of us, you did so many things well. And I would say if the camp now is not allowing care packages, they're doing something well, because having your child go to camp is a way of showing you care. In all caps, bold, exclamation point, italics, underlined, this is a way of showing you care. And the camp has wonderful food and snacks and lots of things to do. So you don't need to send care packages. And that makes it easier for everybody, not just in the name of equity and preventing this kind of, comparison, but also in the name of hygiene. Camps that allow
or
care
lack
packages.
thereof.
Or exactly. I mean,
I came back and saw some yellow teeth. I doubt were brushed, but that's part of it.
Well, there's that. But there's also raccoons and mice and squirrels and all the other,
critters,
creepy crawlies that also love your chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? I'm curious, are there any conversations that sort of come to mind that you encourage parents to have with their children before sending them off? Probably the first time or so to camp.
So it's normal expect that your child is going to express some kind of trepidation. It could be, what if I feel homesick, or what if I don't like this, or what if I'm not making friends? But the response that I coach parents to have when there's some kind of expression of concern or anticipatory anxiety. Hey, I'm glad we're talking about this. I think there will be some sort of adjustment because it's a new place with, new traditions, different menu of activities and food. And of course, like, that takes some getting used to. It's also part of the excitement is that it's different. It's different from home. It's different from school. And I have every confidence that you will be able to push through those periods of adjustment, those days when you feel like, oh, you wish you had another friend, or you're missing something from home, or you don't like what's served for lunch. That's part of the experience. And then, so that's the conversation to have, is one that expresses optimism and confidence. The conversation not to have at any cost in any circumstance is the pickup deal. So saying, well, if you don't like it, I'll come and get you.
Nope,
If you
not
feel
happening.
homesick, yeah, because you have just, incapacitated the camp staff, whatever they would say to coach your child through a normal bout of homesickness, is immediately surpassed by your offer on the table, which is, there's something you don't like, I'm going to come and get you. What we want to be doing as loving parents is saying, there's something you don't like, or if you're uncomfortable, I want you to learn the coping skills to manage that, right? I mean, and you don't have to use those words, but when you say you can persevere, the camp staff are there to help you, write to me about how you feel and I'll write back. This is what we want to say without ever putting on the table a pickup deal. It's horrible.
What's interesting is essentially what I'm hearing you say, reading between the lines or listening between the lines, is parents, don't insert yourself in the process. So no, I'll come get you if you're miserable. Don't insist on phone calls.
Go.
Let your child have an
That's right.
opportunity to excel and navigate conflict and emotions
Right.
on the child's own footing.
Yes.
So
P.S.
if
We
you-
deserve
yeah.
a break as, from full-time parenthood. So enjoy.
Oh, amen. Amen. Well, if you can't do the pre-summer before the summer tour, which I have to say I could do for my first child, but then 2 and 3 didn't have that luxury. What is the advice you give parents right now, end of November, early December, to help give students the choice of camps? Would it be helpful? Because you really can't do a camp visit now.
Right.
Camps are closed. So would you say have them look online and watch those great videos and then maybe have a call with the camp director?
That would be perfect. I think there are probably some things you can do before you go online, such as, open-ended conversation about what are you imagining you'd like to do at camp? And are you imagining that you would like to be at a co-ed camp or an all-gender camp or a boys camp or a girls camp? Are you imagining you would like to be, in the mountains, close to the shore, on a lake? So you can throw some of those parameters out there. And if you have camp experience, you can also describe the camp where you went and what that was like. And then you can go online and do a bit of a virtual tour, but the American Camp Association's website and kids camps and a few other places, if you Google databases of summer camps, you're going to be able to find, keeping in mind that the American Camp Association's database and the provincial camp association's databases are the only ones that camps are not paying an extra fee for to advertise. So yes, it's all marketing. Yes, it's all advertising. And yes, you have to pay to be a member of the American Camp Association or the Ontario Camp Association, but you don't have to pay anything extra to be listed. You do have to pay extra to be listed in these other online listings. So you may not get a complete list, but you can narrow it down, and then you can start, as you said, going onto the websites and taking a peek. And it's wonderful to be able to talk to the camp director. One other thing that I would ask the camp director is, could you give me the names of some families local to me who have kids at camp right now or have in the last few years? And the reason I would phrase it like that, families local to me, is twofold. One, if you say, give me the names of some families, they're going to give you the names of the 2 families that are their personal friends who loved camp the most and are an extension of the marketing. If you say families local to you, that means that they can't handpick the 2 families to Zoom with. They're local to whatever town you're in. Plus, if they are families local to you, this is the best thing, getting families together, whether it's during this winter break or, sometime in January, February, or maybe the March or April break. But, so the kids can talk camp. I'm talking about a returning camper, and the parents can chat about what helped their child and what helped their own adjustment, because of course they're going to miss their kids. But I think that's wonderful. So just add that as the cherry on top to your virtual tour idea.
I remember doing that, by the way, calling the parents who were local. I did. And I also used, they were great, a camp advisor, where I spoke to the person, said what I was interested in. They generated a list, and it was free. So parents should know I don't know how you feel about camp advisors. There are people who take their fees from the camps and not the parents.
Right.
Is that something you would recommend as well?
I think that as long as you recognize what it is that is being paid for, either by you or the camp, which is access, camp advisors can be enormously helpful in meeting a family, meeting a child, helping that child cull down, their interests or listen to what their interests are and cull down the list of camps, knowing that you're going to be getting a choice or be offered a few camps that are already on that camp advisor's list. The pro being that camp advisor has personally vetted those camps. So they've done some of the background research for you. The downside being the list is limited to the camps that pay to work with that advisor, or it's limited by the advisor's geographic scope, but it can be enormously helpful and a wonderful dimension to finding camps. You can do your virtual camp tour and then talk to a camp advisor. You start to get some like convergent validity if you're coming up with the same 2 or 3 camp names, right?
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Thurber, this has been a real treat. I think that you've given us some really, really great information and food for thought for parent listeners out there. And I'm glad that we were able to talk summer camp. It gives us something to look forward to on this cold, snowy day.
Yeah.
Kristina, do you think that we could go to summer camp?
I wish. We
could use that.
Spa weekend. That's our summer camp, right?
There you go. Club Med.
Spa hour if we're lucky. Thank you, Dr. Thurber. We really loved having you.
I love being here. Happy holidays.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Susan and Kristina. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review so other people can find the content we share here. You can follow us on Instagram. Just search our handle @StoneSupler. And for more resources, visit us online at studentdefense.kjk.com. Thank you so much for being a part of our Real Talk community. We'll see you next time.